Few things in this life are better than sitting down and enjoying a truly beautiful game of chess. I assure you that today you're going to enjoy it like never before. We're going to enjoy a fantastic game by Vladimir Kramnik, none other than the man who took the throne from Garry Kasparov, who is probably the best player of all time. While it's certainly true that Kramnik played this particular game at a time when he was no longer in his prime, actually he's already 42 years old here, he still manages to keep his unique style and elegance almost completely intact. You're really going to enjoy it. He started with knight f3. His opponent, Bluebaum, the German player, responded with d5, right? Taking full advantage of the fact that Kramnik had not placed any of his pawns on the central squares of the board, the black player quickly moved to occupy those important central spaces himself. g3. Now black plays bishop g5, bishop g4, a very good move. Why? Because it's clear that black wants to play e6, and once they do, this bishop, if not previously developed, would be trapped inside the pawn chain and couldn't do much. The game continues with bishop g2, a fianchetto from Kramnik, e6, now seeing the exact style we just mentioned, and castling. As you can see, Kramnik has already successfully developed his two pieces and castled, while the black player is still quite a long way off from castling. Knight to f6, d3, bishop to e7, then h3, threatening the bishop, and when it retreats, Kramnik realizes that right here, he has actually achieved something very interesting indeed, since the black player decided to develop the bishop outside of the pawn chain, which is generally considered a very positive and active move. It also comes with its downside, and that is the fact that it's left the queen side quite exposed and vulnerable. When you're able to locate an attack point, a weakness like this one here on b7, you should really try to go for it whenever possible. Normally, this point is very well defended by the light-squared bishop. However, now it's extremely far from being able to move back. That's why Kramnik comes up with the brilliant move c4 to move the queen to b3 and be able to attack the b7 point. Why c4 and not c3? Well, obviously, if we play c3, we're giving black all the time in the world to start defending their weakness. If we opt for the more sharp move, which in this case is c4, since it puts direct pressure on the d5 point, the central point, we're attacking a central point from the side. Black must react immediately. For example, with this c6 and the purest semi-Slav defense style. And now the move queen b3 is extremely strong, right? It hits the center, hits the b7 point, and now black must decide. The most common thing when they try to attack this type of weakness is to defend with the queen itself, queen b6. And I'm going to tell you something that could be really useful for your games. Whenever you find yourselves in these specific types of situations where the queens face off on b3 and b6, right here on this queen side, it's usually much better if they trade queens with us. Meaning not us trading queens ourselves, but them trading with us, so we can recapture with the side pawn and open the file for the rook. And then suddenly we'll have a very interesting file where we can fight to pressure this a7 point, in this particular case, right? So why didn't the player with the black pieces decide to play queen b6, which seems logical? Well, he didn't like this queen e3, forcing a trade of these queens, right? And after this queen trade, we'd see that the pieces converge very well on this point. And while it's true it could be defended easily, all the dark squares would become extremely weak, and this game is very comfortable for the white pieces. They wouldn't have won the game, but they would have gained a very interesting advantage to apply pressure. That's why after this queen b3 attacking the b7 point, black decides to react with queen c8, defending this pawn. Not c7 either, because it'll be walking right into bishop 4, right? Queen k. The game continues with this g5, g4, attacking the bishop, which retreats to the g6 square. And now Kramnik decides it's time to release the tension before it's too late, and black captures on c4. Pawn takes pawn. Very interesting to capture this pawn. Let's talk about why. If it's captured with the knight, this structure will be very limiting for the black pieces. Besides being boxed in, they've left control of the center completely within white's reach. They've eliminated their only pawn in the 4 central squares themselves, and now any pawn advance could be very beneficial for white. Capturing with the d-pawn, while it might also seem very interesting, would lead to an unbalanced position where the pawn structure would be asymmetrical. It would be a 4 on 2, and here it would be 5 on 3, more or less, so you understand, it wouldn't be exactly like that, but we'd reach an unbalanced structure where white would have a very good attacking motive. In this case, he decides to take with the cut pawn simply to say one thing: I'm playing against none other than Vladimir Kramnik. I'm going to play a symmetrical structure where not much happens, and I hold my ground, because a draw suits me extremely well. The game continues with bishop f4. Let's see if I don't knock over all the pieces here. And the idea of bishop 4 is obvious, right? Start developing pieces that converge on the same points. For example, we want to bring a rook to c1. Attacking this queen, she'll have to retreat, so we already know we can gain a tempo here. Knight c6, knight c3, castling by black. It seems we're completely equal in development. All pieces developed, we're both castled, although there's a small difference, which is that white already has the rooks connected and black doesn't yet. The rook is placed on c1 in the same file as the queen, which is why logically queen to d7 is played. It's not a good idea at all to keep the queen on the same file as the rook, because very quickly, in an instant, the knights can disappear and the attack can be devastating. The knight moves to the outpost, attacking the queen immediately. There's no better option than to exchange these knights. Bishop takes, and now the player with the black pieces plays h5, aiming a strike at the king side of Vladimir Kramnik's white pieces. And here begins the true mastery of Vladimir Kramnik, which will really excite all of you who love chess, because if I'm bringing this game to the channel, it's for a reason. You'll see that it's very, very precise and very exciting. It starts like this. It doesn't benefit the white pieces to exchange pawns. Now it's more beneficial for them to start applying pressure. A knight that has to retreat, and now this pawn, even though it's vulnerable to the black bishop's attack, can be quickly defended with f4. This f4 is very interesting. It opens the rook's line, although whenever you play this type of f4, you must keep in mind that the diagonal opens up for a potential check. In fact, here, bishop to c5 by black is what happened in the game. But anyway, after this d4, the bishop retreats here, and it seems like everything is quite well positioned. This bishop is very well placed in this outpost, well defended by its pawns, and also, who knows if this bishop might enter the game at some point. The surprise for the player with the black pieces was that here, Vladimir Kramnik wasn't satisfied with a maneuvering move, doubling rooks on the c-file, or any kind of quiet moves like advancing this pawn, but instead did the following. He launched an attack with f5, giving away the pawn. Let me explain. This pawn cannot be captured with the other pawn, because then, besides the bishop looking like a Christmas ornament that only serves to decorate the tree, right? It was completely unable to move and could only go backward, which was of no use at all. Furthermore, it would stop defending this specific point. That's why, no matter what, it must capture with the bishop. But here, I suppose the player with the black pieces started to get the shakes when he saw that Vladimir Kramnik sacrificed the rook for the bishop. He made an exchange sacrifice. Sacrificing the rook for a minor piece, whether it's a knight or a bishop, is called an exchange sacrifice. We've talked about it several times on the channel. Pawn takes rook, there's nothing better, logically, than to accept the rook, because otherwise we'd be down a bishop. And now the idea is that after this knight takes d5, it's true, Vladimir Kramnik is slightly down in material, but look at the difference in the pieces. The queen and the bishop are on the two great diagonals. This bishop is extremely well placed, and thanks to the wedge it has on g5, it really can't be easily driven away. And what can we say, right, about this knight so well placed on the d5 square? And last but not least, we have our only remaining rook on the open file. So Kramnik's position is very interesting, and you'll see how he works it until he wins. The queen moves to e6. The game continues with king h1, moving away from any kind of threat, right? In this case, the threat was queen takes bishop, since the pawn was completely pinned. The rook moves to d8, attacking the knight with two pieces, and now he defends with queen f3. Simple, right? Besides, a queen trade doesn't suit Vladimir Kramnik. as he's down on material and the queen is the best attacking piece. He defends well here and also attacks the h5 point, which is quickly defended with the move g6. e3, solidifying the position a bit to avoid any surprises. As you can see, he sacrificed the exchange, not for an immediate attack, but to have better placed pieces in the long run. The black player quickly realizes here, that this knight is going to end up on this square here, and the attack will be launched sooner or later. Therefore, he tries to improve his king's position to make everything a bit more compact. The knight moves to f4, the queen slides over to d7, and now the queen comes, not just to defend the pawn, but to actively target and pressure the opponent's weaknesses. What's the idea behind his queen move? Now f6 can't be played, because if it's taken, the queen would take on g6, and this would end in nothing less than checkmate, right? Thanks to the knight's play as well. As you can see, the white pieces are much better positioned, and here the black player tried to trade bishops. And what was he thinking? Well, I'll use this useless bishop to eliminate the monster bishop Vladimir Kramnik has on this central square. And this thinking is totally correct, because if bishop takes, knight takes, this knight can enter through here, and that would be great news for black. However, do you know what Vladimir Kramnik did? He decided to sacrifice the exchange for a second time, giving up his rook for a bishop once again, because he was thinking that his rooks simply weren't strong enough when compared to these active minor pieces. And suddenly, we begin to realize right here that Kramnik's pieces are actually playing much better than before. These two rooks are material advantage, yes, but they have no open files to move through. The only one they have is this one here. It doesn't seem to do much damage either, right? Vladimir Kramnik's idea with his bishop f6 isn't to win back the rook, far from it. You'll see what the idea is. Here, if black stays passive, they lose immediately, because after the knight sacrifice on h5, the queen would come into capture and it would be mate for sure. Therefore, they must make the only possible move, which is this one, queen d4, trying to sneak in on the back rank and try for a perpetual check. Knight takes h5. Here, I think the player with the black pieces thought, Kramnik has made a mistake here, because I can simply slip in at some point to give checks, or I can even come, let's see, I'm just making this up. I can come through here, then I can come through here, I can slip in to defend, right? And it seems that from the back rank, I defend everything well. However, after capturing the knight, look at how much extra material the black pieces have, huh? Here, what the black player actually calculated, in this case, is that if Kramnik came to attack this pawn, he could in some case enter through the back rank, as I was telling you. The thing is that Vladimir Kramnik found a masterstroke here, and it's the intermediate g6 check. Can this pawn be captured? Well, no, this pawn cannot be captured, because then we would capture the knight with a check. See? So what should they do? Well, they must move the king back. And now the game continues as follows. Queen g5, with ideas of going straight in to checkmate the opponent. Probably, the black player was low on time here and understood that with the move h4, he could try to give this perpetual check. See? So he played this h4 to help this wedge, right? And indeed, that's what he tried. However, here Kramnik came in with queen h6, threatening immediate mate. In other words, black either gets the perpetual check or checkmate is coming on the next move. And here, the game continued as follows. Check, but it's useless because look, king h2, check. The king now comes to this square here and not to h1. And the game continues as follows. Bishop f1 and black resigned. There's no way to keep giving checks. And on the next move, this checkmate with the queen is coming. And let me explain. Probably, after this queen move here, the black pieces could save themselves in a very simple way. King h1. What's the only check they have left? Queen 3, right? But now, the queen is simply changed diagonals and is on white squares. She can no longer return to the wedge that had been created with the pawn. There would be no more checks. Therefore, there would be no way to stop the next checkmate. This game is truly wonderful. I hope you loved it. If you really enjoy these kinds of absolutely spectacular games, please consider leaving me a like, and know that you can gain a massive amount of knowledge just by seeing how the best players do it. And we'll see you in the next one, my friends. Goodbye.